I'm Tom Hoppe, and I'm your host of the Most Painful Podcast. Research has shown veterans who suffer with chronic pain may also suffer with an operational stress injury. When one suffers from chronic pain and an operational stress injury, it can severely impact their quality of life and create stress within the family. On today's show, we are joined by Steve Critchley, founder of CanPraxis, a nonprofit organization helping veterans and their families who are struggling with chronic pain and operational stress injury. Before we begin with the show, I just want to reach out to our listeners. And if you have any comments or feedback about the show, please contact us at the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence website and let us know your thoughts. We've had some guests that have reached out to us and provided some valuable input, which will guide our show to provide better education for you. So, Steve, I'm going to start with you. And if you can let me know, what is CanPraxis?
Tom, first, thanks very much for the invite. Very much appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation. CanPraxis is a program specifically designed to provide highly specialized therapy and education to an injured veteran and their spouse or family member or partner regarding communication, how it's affected by mental health injuries, and how to get people talking effectively to each other, one conversation at a time.
And Steve, why is that important when we have, someone suffering from chronic pain or an operational stress injury or both? Why is that important?
Everything comes down to communication. We've had many people over the past 9 years participate on the program who, along with their operational stress injury, are suffering major chronic pain. And their quality of life, without being able to communicate effectively with the person most important to them, their spouse, for example, their relationship suffers greatly. When a relationship suffers greatly, it creates further mental strain, mental health injuries, and it can end up with the destruction of family relationships. And that's not good enough.
So in CanPraxis, what are you doing differently that is helping veterans communicate better?
One of the things is recognizing the unfortunate aspect of a lot of our participants are individuals who have suffered injuries that have left them with chronic pain. This has developed into mental health injuries as well, and they're losing the ability to have a simple conversation about anything with the people that are most important to them in the home. So for us, our focus is with specialized therapy, using horses, for example, and education. We're able to help people understand their injuries better. If they understand their injuries better, they now have better ways of looking for options that provide some form of relief, even as basic as being able to have that one simple conversation. Other programs have left that behind, and it's no sense taking a person out of their home, sending them somewhere different, teaching them a new language, and sending them back home. No one knows what the heck they're talking about. So the focus has always been spouses are equals on this program and not a support mechanism. And that's huge. And now it's the family that we're helping.
So just to step back a bit, you're talking about horses. So can you explain that? Horses? How are horses helping somebody with conversation? They're suffering from pain.
Well, we're very fortunate that one of our facilitators, Dr. Brenda Abbey, her research has demonstrated that the human brain around horses produces dopamine. Dopamine is the natural feel-good chemical the human brain provides for us. And what's really important when that's happening is that's helping the primitive part of the brain reconnect with the higher functioning part of the brain. While that's happening, we can sneak in a little door, plant some seeds of education, and sneak out again. That dopamine is helping that person learn new techniques on communication despite their pain and their injuries.
So are you using horses as a metaphor then in this in your training?
Horses are being used for scientific reasons. We're not using horses to try and make cowboys out of anyone or any ridiculous games of that nature. This is an injury that has the potential to be fatal. And so we have to respect our participants by providing them therapy and education based on science. Horses are the world's experts at reading body language. And body language, as we know, is so important to every conversation. When you consider 93% of every conversation is nonverbal, the horses are able to pick up on that.
So basically, if we look at someone who's suffering with chronic pain, and I know this in the clinic that we did some of the coaching for identity and culture with veterans, is the communication between clinicians. So what you're saying from your program is that if you can teach someone to have a good conversation, then they're better able to talk about their injuries with their clinicians and also their spouse. I mean, I would think with chronic pain, many veterans may not be able to communicate with their spouse the journey that they're having because there's a lot going on when someone's suffering with chronic pain. So you're using horses, you're trying to build the skill so they can have a better conversation. Is that correct?
The horses provide an in-your-face example of what do you bring to a conversation before you even start speaking. And with that, the culture we come from in the military and first responder world can be very dominating, and that can close down conversations with other people. The expectation that a conversation is simply to relay specific orders and expectations, that's not a conversation. And so what we're doing is helping people realize, no conversation, no resolution. Nothing will ever change without a conversation. And that includes the adjunct therapy that individuals, once they learn to communicate effectively with their spouse, are now able to communicate much more effectively with their therapists. And with that, you have a good exchange of information. Good exchange of information results in better decisions for all involved. So using the horses helps people understand what we refer to as pressure and release within a conversation.
So can you give us an example on pressure and release, how that works?
Well, pressure and release basically are based on trust and respect. Any relationship, whether it be a relationship with your family, a relationship with your doctor, your therapist, etc., it all comes down to trust and respect. You put on too much pressure and people lose respect. You put on too much pressure, people lose their trust in your capabilities. Not enough pressure or no pressure, if you're always being pushed around, means a lack of respect once again. And relationships need that equilibrium of trust and respect. Horses just simply show you whether you're providing an environment through your body language and verbal conversation, whether you can be trusted or respected.
So it sounds like it's awareness, right? So you're providing awareness to the individual of how they're acting and maybe have some self-reflection on their behavior to provide changes so they can do better.
A lot of what we're seeing, and it goes back to what you touched on culture, is the realization that a lot of veterans serving and or retired simply aren't aware they're treating their family like the troops. And if you treat your family like the troops, you're going to lose that family. So it's important to understand through self-reflection by the horse saying, you know what, you're a dickhead. Your attitude sucks, and I don't want to be around you. And it's in your face, and it causes the individual to step back and say, what's going on here? Why does this horse think I'm approaching it with a dickhead attitude, as it were? When a 1,200-pound animal looks at you, turns around, and walks away and says, I want nothing to do with you because of your attitude, you can't ignore that.
And that's where the self-reflection, I think, comes in. And we've seen that with, when we do identity theory and with veterans, we see the challenges that they have because many, if not all, I would suggest, myself included, takes time to really see the changes that occur to us when we join service. So by using a horse, you're kind of putting up a mirror for that individual to look into.
Very much so. And the sort of flip side of that is if you have someone who's not able to leave the house for whatever reason, often there's a lack of self-confidence, a lack of motivation. Depression can be very much in play. And that individual will be pushed around by a horse. And what we're showing them is that if you can be assertive, not aggressive, assertive, learn how to stand up for yourself, that increases self-confidence. Self-confidence boosts self-esteem. Self-esteem creates great pride, and people with great self-esteem and pride are not dying by suicide.
Yeah, and I think that's all important. And I mean, I read an article too in the newspaper, and it goes to show how well your program is working. You guys got funding from Veterans Affairs to develop a family program, which I think from a veteran's point of view is great because our family, our spouses and kids are sometimes forgotten. So it's great that you guys got that. Can you explain a little bit about the family program?
Well, we understand that if you want to be successful in your endeavors in life, in overcoming injuries, your family has an important part to play in that. You are not alone in this injury. These injuries, chronic pain, operational stress injuries, those are family affairs. The one individual isn't dealing with this all on their own. So there needs to be good communication within that family so that you can remove a lot of the triggers and stress points in everyday life and make conversations more effective. And I go back to good information equals good decisions. If good information means if the kids know this is a bad pain day and things can't happen, it helps to be able to have a conversation about that so the kids don't think they've done something wrong, and that the kids understand this is something that isn't planned for. You have these bad days, they just happen. No rhyme, no reason, they just happen. And to be able to communicate effectively about them helps kids understand that this is life. Bad things happen, and if you are persistent and follow through, the result will be good things happen. And the family can do that when they work together. And that's what the program is focused on, is first we have the parents come and get them on the same page. Then we have the kids come with the parents, and we put the whole family on the same page, same understanding, and same basic ground rules on how to have an argument.
And hopefully a good conversation at the end. Yeah, having the family component, I think that is, an excellent step forward, especially for Veterans Affairs to support your organization to do that. Because too many times, as you said, and we've heard from many other people, is when veterans are on their own, it just compounds what they're already dealing with. If they're dealing with an OSI injury, then we throw chronic pain, which is, veterans have a high amount of chronic pain, then that affects their biopsychosocial, and family is part of that, as well as community too. So it's good that they're doing that. But to have that long lasting, I guess, what kind of tools are you using to that people walk away? And that, I guess your program is like a couple days long, but what are people walking away with, and how are they able to use tools that they've learned that are long lasting?
Part of it comes down to the education component, having a better understanding of what injuries you're dealing with, how that affects your ability to make good decisions, how that affects your ability to have a conversation, and the recognition that each family is going to have different trigger points. And what we mean by that is each family has something that will cause it distress through conversation, etc., as chronic pain definitely can lead to mental health injuries. And understanding how those mental health injuries prevent people from particular moments of their day from having an effective conversation is important. Then what we're doing is teaching the family members boundaries. And what we mean by boundaries is the recognition that if they're involved in a conversation that starts to go sideways and become destructive, either physically or mentally, how to use a safe word, set up some boundaries, and go to your safe place. Then the other part of this teaching them how to invite each other back to a conversation. Get away from this, well, he should know why I'm upset with him. She should know why I'm not speaking. Get away from this shooting on each other and instead invite each other to a productive conversation. And with this is teaching them how to have a conversation about one topic at a time. So we basically say, if you're going to talk about an apple, don't show up at the conversation with a fruit salad. Keep it simple. And what we're doing is providing them with their ability to stay connected with each other so that when they are having difficulties after the program, they can reach out to their peers and receive support and guidance from them as well. Then we're also educating them about other programs, therapies, etc. that exist that they could also access to help move forward. So it's a big component of education, and then talking, and help them keep things focused on one small success a day. Forget the big picture, focus on the small smalls, as we say. And we have found that to be extremely successful over the last 9 years.
Who would ever thought that something as simple as a conversation could create so many issues? But we know it does, and we read about it a lot. We hear about it a lot. Body language, people can interpret that the wrong way, and then miscommunication creates a lot of issues. But for some reason, a program like yours, from what I've seen, very few focus on the whole family unit to have that conversation. So I think that's a really good step forward to help veterans and their families, and good for you for doing that. Well, it takes us to the end of our show, and Steve, I'd like to thank you so much for being on the show, and your work that you've put in, your passion put in over the 9 years, I think has helped many veterans. And CanPraxis is not just for veterans, but first responders as well. That's correct.
Correct.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Steve, for joining us on the show. Very informative. How can people donate to CanPraxis?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. The awareness and support is huge. And for those who want to help us help our injured veterans and first responders, they can donate online through our website, CanPraxis.com, or even send an e-transfer directly to us through our email address as well. So you can donate by check, you can donate by online, you can donate through the website. All are very much appreciated.
Well, thank you for that, Steve. A very worthy cause. You've been around for 9 years, done a great job, and now you're looking after the family. So thanks for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for the interest and support.
All right, well, that's the end of our show. And once again, listeners, if you have any comments or feedbacks, please just go on the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence website, go to the contact page, and we'll pick up your feedback and your questions, and we'll constantly improve the show. Thank you.
The Most Painful Podcast is produced for the Chronic Pain Center of Excellence by Story Studio Network and Eye Contact Productions.